What's happening, people? We are just waiting on Coach Rick to jump in here. Let me try to get this shit straightened up. We have, whoa. Oh, shit. Lavone. Now, somebody said they can't hear you. Everybody could hear? Okay.
There
Rick,
he is.
what's happening?
Nothing. Just trying to clean up the room, man.
Yeah,
Place a mess. I had a wolf down lunch.
I hear you, bro. I ain't got
Throw
that far
some
yet.
crap out there.
We've been rolling,
Yeah, you've been
but that's
busy.
good.
It's always good. Throwing mats all over the place. There's just, in this house, there's always a GOATA mat on the ground somewhere. A set of chucks. There should be. There's a set of chucks somewhere. There's a GOATA mat somewhere, a football somewhere, a golf club, basketballs. So what's up?
Oh, shit. Same old shit. Just,
Yep.
no, I mean, good, you know, it's living the dream, bro.
Right.
You know, finally got the paperwork done.
Yep.
That was crucial. That took a year. You know, but nothing, just you know, building the gym back up, like getting it back to where it was. I had taken that little hiatus, I guess you could say, to
Right.
us to focus on the business side of everything and get the ownership right and get everything remodeled the way that we kind of seen it best for us. And then now it's about getting back out there. I got my guy back, you know, that my kids, that some of them that had, you know, they had to go and keep building and keep doing their own thing, and you know, like guys like Jabari and all, they got to keep moving. Like, they couldn't wait around for me, but
Sure.
now that they, you know, he's back, we're gonna clean him up because, you know, he hit the weight room. He's in the 9th grade now, so it's, you know, and that's what that little younger group that I had that I was working on next.
There's Big Duck.
Know, Big Duck in the back.
Yo.
So we
Jabari's that, everybody mark that name. Jabari.
Jabari Mack.
Jabari Mack's that next guy. He's that next Jamar Chase coming out of there for sure, man. Special character, special cat, special talent.
He just got
to
stay the course.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He stays the course, and everything falls in line for him. We talking. He's freshman right now, so the latest thing is we get him into the ACT prep, getting him all set up with that, and, you know, getting him back in the lab, cleaning up all the movement. That was kind of, you know, we gotta get.
He was a right foot. I remember the right foot was starting to get a little crooked. There was a little bit of inner ankle bone low starting to show on his right
well, the
side.
Thing is you know, he was a super back chain dominant kid, like, and you don't see that too often at that age. And hold on one second. Look in that bottom drawer. It's in one of them drawers, I think. You don't see that with you know, they lose that tail to crown, and then that tail starts to tuck a little bit, and what happens is it'll shorten the hamstring, I find, and it compresses everything. It could be a knee problem, and it could be he was suffering with his glutes when he got here, and I think what happened is like it kind of like they started getting real sore and tender and stuff. And then, you know, once we got him back into that back chain, opened everything up, got his hammies back open, then they stopped, like, dominating that. Dude, them hamstrings are, if they not right, if they not, you know, and we talk about, like, you know, if he goes in there and says, hey, I got a glute issue, he came in and he's like, they just said it's getting weak. And I'm like, no, it's not getting weak. It's just they're not working you systematically no more, so it's not allowed to do its job and develop strength. Whereas before, you was developing strength inside the system, which is the natural process, which is the baby, the indigenous tribe. he gets stronger by doing. Whereas you didn't try to get stronger by doing no more. You started being thrown into the weight room and started isolating to get stronger. It bastardizes the system and it turns something off. And then that's where you get stuck at. And so now getting him to understand that concept to where, hey, I got to go into that high school weight room. I got to do those lifts. I'm going to go in there. I'm a yes, sir, no, sir. I'm going to do what they tell me to do. And then I'm going to go, and while they over there, I'm going to just go on the wall and work my back chain a little bit, or, you know, grab me a plate while I'm waiting my turn and get into like some type of isolated, you know, iso hold or split stance, or something to superset and also offset the bad movement, you know, and get away from the isolation.
Yeah, that perfectly segues into what we talked about, you, me, and RJ this morning, about people loading pressure into their legs or not understanding that, you know, where is the pressure is something that has to be in the forefront of your mind, because anytime you're doing training, and if you look at a lot of the training you're doing, it's centered around squat derivatives. So anytime you're in that squat derivative and you're loading pressure into those columns, and you got a kneecap that's tracking straight, even if you are heels up, a lot of it's going to be heels down, but there's people that they'll try to go heels up and the kneecap will point straight, and they're really just loading into what's going to turn into a collapsed system once they start to bound, once they start to go into the jog, the run, the throw, the swing, it's going to set into a collapse. So you take an athlete like a Jabari and they put him under these heavy back squats where now the bow gets collapsed. And so they're not able to open up the shin, not able to open up the thigh into a down, back, and out pattern. And what happens is the access just simply gets shut off, right? There's a certain amount of space that needs to be sort of accounted for inside the system when you land and load. And when you're pointing that kneecap straight, you have suffocated the system.
Yeah.
So anytime you're in your squat derivatives, there has to be a kneecap pointing out. And there's a important distinction between pointing your kneecap out and then shoving laterally. So you never want to shove laterally, and that's a big thing that is a misconception with GOATA. I think people see it, and we're so, you know, one track minded as far as single plane, single range. So people think lateral, they think medial, they don't think multi-planar, down, back, and out. So the kneecap pointing out is really just speaking to a multi-planar turn that's happening inside the shin compartment, inside the thigh compartment, that's plugged into the foot, much like a joystick. And so that foot holds still, and the shin and the thigh turn down, back, and out. The kneecap points out, and you need to have that present in your training when you're in a squat derivative, because you want your body to respond to pressure with that shape. So when pressure hits the system, the foot shores up into an inside ankle bone high structure, and the shin and the thigh and then everything else upstream just slide down, back, and out. But we see this all the time, right? These big time athletes, even, you know, Gen Pop, that's been doing, you know, lunges or, you know, squats or whatever it may be. They've been compressing their system. They've been locking up their shin. They've been locking up their thigh. And if you're not feeding that bow, then you're going the other way.
Yeah.
Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's a binary system. So you have to be sure, have to be sure that you first and foremost get your foot platform right, which if you guys watch the videos when Gary's coaching and cueing, and we're trying to bring more of those to you guys, you'll see him constantly talking about the foot structure. I mean, 90% of the video is the camera at the foot structure, because that's where Gary's eyes are, is, hey, what's the foot structure doing? Let's make sure that we got all the toe pads down, right? We can't have the big toe pad up. Can't have the heel down. Got to make sure the toe pads are down, but the inner ankle bone is high, and that's a battle in and of itself. Once we get that, then we got to get the kneecap to point. And the kneecap is just the scope. It's just the scope of that hip and that ankle. So the knee is just hinging. It's a meeting spot between the two gyroscopes of the thigh and the shin. And so the kneecap pointing out is more or less telling you about what's going on above and below. So make sure when you're packing pressure into a leg, when you're in a squat derivative, that you have all those things present. Because if you've got, even if, you know, I see people, they'll lift their heel up, they'll get what they think is inside ankle bone high, and then the kneecap's just pointing straight ahead. And they're not really feeding a bow. And then they go to run, and now they got a crooked foot because they're trying to make up for the front chain dominance that they've put into the system in their training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you go in there and like you're saying, and one little piece of that system is not perfectly in alignment with everything, that's where the Recode process comes in. So somebody asked about, I've heard Bam discussing keeping wrist bone high when using the hands. Can you guys discuss that at all? Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the big things that really brought a lot of awareness when we started talking wrist bone high or whatever.
We call it inside wrist bone high, to be direct. And
yeah, right.
We've had it labeled for a long time as inside wrist bone high.
Yeah, we started like it's been in the teachings, like and probably what happens a lot of times is coaches come in and they get the information, and then that's why it's important that your coach is still locked in, because a lot of this stuff evolves. Terminology gets pinned down a little bit better. You know, the Institute houses information for them that's constantly updated. So, you know, making sure that you come to the source for the information is very important, especially when you're playing with your joint segments or your child's joint segments, and you're going to need those things for life. One of the things that really brought a lot of awareness is I had the little kid, Brandon, that's got he's got spina bifida. So basically he was kind of born with the spine, like it was born outside of the body or whatever, and they had to kind of do surgery and closing back up and stuff like that. So what happens is he has no lower half, like, so he uses his arms as his foot platform, and it's his way of locomoting. So immediately when I see, he does box jumps, like he can jump up and down from the box, and he pulls himself up, and his little hands are like feet, like they're grabbing things, and they kind of like, you know, they grabbing the ground the same way that we would want that same concept. Conceptual is the same thing. He don't drive this part of the hand into the ground. He's using more of the outside edge, which if you was in karate class, you know, they would tell you to use this strong side of the hand, not the thumb area, which would be in comparison to maybe the big toe. And then he'll catch like this, bow, bow, and he's got the wrist up. And he's hitting like this, pow, pow, and he's absorbing the energy. And just his bow is a little different because the hinge is backwards. It's not forwards. So he it's a little bit, the technology in the wrist and the technology in the shoulder is basically the same system with the hinge in the middle.
We would talk about it. Remember, we would say the bicep bone is the thigh bone, and the shin bone is the forearm bone, to keep it simple. And then the hand becomes the platform, the foot becomes the platform. Now, obviously, we don't need to keep our hands on the ground to locomote, right? We can move just off of those, that one pivot point, which allows us to be bipedal. But the same force lines apply to the upper limb and the lower limb. So like Gary's saying, just think about your push-up. Like if you were to try to push off this inside corner, that's going to be troubling, right? You want to be on the outside corner. You want to be inside wrist bone high, as we would say. But the cool thing about inside wrist bone high is that it's really built into our dexterity grip. And so our dexterity grip is really what we evolved for, if you will, or are created to do, is to grab, to throw, to manipulate art, drawing, language. And so when you're talking about inside wrist bone high, from like a grabbing the pencil, grabbing a golf club, grabbing a baseball bat, grabbing a football, shooting a basketball, I teach it like this to my athletes, and maybe this will help you guys, but I tell them peace sign. So you want to have space between 1 and 2. And what really happens is this sort of becomes like the clamp. So like we kind of clamp down here, and then it allows this to kind of grab the pencil. Think of how you're grabbing a pencil, and notice when you go to grab a pencil like they taught you to, the inner wrist bone pops high. And it just allows you to create this sort of dexterity model in the wrist, so you're able to sort of flow that bow and corner in the wrist. And so if you watch any great golfer, they'll usually have space between 1 and 2 on both of their hands. If you watch a great quarterback, they'll have space between 1 and 2. If you watch a great basketball shooter, they'll have space between 1 and 2. So that's just our natural sort of dexterity model inside the hand, is we kind of almost break these off and kind of squeeze, and then this is able to kind of manipulate. So any of my, baseball obviously has some nuance because you're trying to manipulate certain pitches, but my quarterbacks out there create a little space between 1 and 2. My golfers create a little space between 1 and 2. And what it does is it helps you kind of clamp down through the strong side, and this becomes more of a dexterity type of design. Famous samurai Miyamoto Musashi was big on this type of grip holding his samurai sword, and he didn't want a lot of play inside the hands. And so he was really, there's images of him kind of swinging the samurai sword much like this, and you see a great golfer, and they'll be swinging the club much like this. You see a great quarterback, and they'll just kind of be throwing the football like this. So there's this natural peace sign that you want to try to create when you're manipulating something, and that same idea sort of plays out when the push-up is in play, but then think about your hand-to-hand combat athletes, and I usually think of football, obviously, O-line versus D-line, running back versus linebacker, even wide receiver versus DB, and you'll see that sort of inside wrist bone high, protect the inside of the hand, the same way that, not saying that you wouldn't have any contact there, once again, same idea at the foot level, but you would really funnel more of the pressure to the outer corner of the hand, and that just keeps the wrist gyro from sort of getting jammed up and creating problems at not only the wrist, but the elbow, the shoulder, the neck. And you can see how everything would work up into that upper limb. It could be a problem.
Yeah. Real quick, Coach said that ACT score is about to go away for college eligibility. That's it's kind of a biased test. Like I think it's good. I mean, you go to school for 4 years, you pass the whole time, you do homework every day, and then you go there and take a test, and they say you can't go to college. Like, and I know it's a retention thing or something like that, but shit. I
gotta bite my tongue on school.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I have, and listen, it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like I'm, I don't have no education, zero. I know how to do slow motion video, and that ain't school, right?
Right.
So somebody said something about they like the Scherzer breakdown, and
nice.
why we don't break down more high level athletes.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is one of the reasons why I stopped kind of breaking down the high level athlete for me is that it's like you break down a guy, or you maybe go work with a guy, and then that guy goes and he stops. So he's trying to take GOATA and he's trying to put it in a little piece. Not that we worked with Scherzer, but we know that if they ain't training in the GOATA modality, then they're not working towards this stuff, and they're working away. So the minute that we break down Scherzer, he had a couple of injuries in the last year.
Yeah, he had no oblique.
Too, but he was the closest thing on the mound, and he lasted. It's kind of like what happened with the what's your boy's name, the receiver from the Cardinals. We broke him down, and then next thing you know, he starts getting hurt, and it's like, go look at the training he's doing. But the thing is people are so quick to say, well, y'all said he can move good. Well, we did, but we also said this is how you train that pattern. And once you break down the nervous system, the injury sets in because the nervous system's trying to shut the body down. Mm-hmm. If it's doing its job, like this shit ain't right no more. Hamstrings tighten up. Well, or you pull a groin. And I always use the reference with the athletes because it's easy for them to understand. You're pulling a hamstring or groin because that system that sits below the spine and carries it around, thank God, breaks that down before he breaks the spine down. You know what I'm saying? And there's a system that's innate, that's designed to protect the spine, which is, you could basically, you see it, right? No arms, no legs, just the central nerve. The spine's there. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to have a spine. Like, you could go without a hamstring. So there's almost like it's like a lizard's tail. The lizard will shed its tail, and then 3 years later, it's got its tail back. Well, I'm not saying you're going to regrow legs, but you can regrow the hamstring, or tissue can repair. And it, but that's kind of why we don't do the high level guy as much, because the minute that we try not to confuse the public. So if something's a loaded gun for somebody that's trying to break down our theories, then we're not going to do that to y'all. We're just going to show you the way it should be so that people can walk in there without getting their vision clouded while they're trying to look at the system.
I'll say this though too, Gary, there's not a lot of good security examples in the pitching world. Like we put a video out the other, day and it caught fire, and that's good. And it was talking about, man, you could be explosive as a WOATA and you could be explosive as a GOATA, but you can only be durable as a GOATA. And that's the same thing with pitching is people get caught up in, well, this dude throws gas or this guy throws this number. And it's like, yeah, but he had Tommy Johns. Like there's just not a ton of examples of longevity in the throwing world, in pitching. And it's because they're in such a tough position where it's like, if you look at golfers and you look at pitchers, I put them in a category of their own inside of the swing derivative. And what I mean by that is like, these are guys that every time they go out there, they have to, every hole, for the majority of the time, a golfer is going to swing 100% of their power, right? The drive. They're going to usually bring all the juice they got 100 miles per hour as fast as they can. And it's so much harder to handle GOATA at that point. So any little breakdown that you have is going to show up. And they're doing that round shot, hole after hole, round after round, tournament after tournament. And then your pitchers, well, we know they're trying to throw upwards of 90 to 100. That's why you're seeing Tommy Johns and shoulder issues way more in a pitching world than you are in the quarterback world. Well, the quarterback's only throwing it like 40 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour maybe. They're never touching those speeds. So it takes a very long time for a quarterback to break down. Really, the only two quarterbacks that I can think of that had like true breakdowns are Joe Montana and Ben Roethlisberger. Those are two guys that like pushing after that first decade, probably year 15, 14, 15. I think Roethlisberger's might have been 16 or 17. The elbow finally blew.
Of a guy,
well,
too.
No,
like
but this is just throwing. Like they blew their elbow.
Even getting beat on the whole game, like you get a bruise or something, and next thing you know, your mechanic gets a little different.
Right. Well, those guys actually blew the elbow in the quarterback world. So, like, back to what I was saying is Scherzer is a really good, example of someone that hasn't had a lot of injuries. And one of our coaches, Kyle Goodell, and this was when Scherzer did have his little oblique strain. Kyle did a great job of like going back to earlier Scherzer as opposed to the Scherzer that got hurt that night. And you see a distinct difference in the tail to crown relationship. And this is why when you're training in the gym, you want to put a premium on the global laws. Like that's all your focus is. That's all GOATA was centered around. That's what Gilly first, the whole system was built off of was matching tape, right? Here's the global laws. Here's what shows up in the durable. And here's how it breaks down. Let's just match tape of the durable human. So one of those key fundamentals is back chain dominance, as we call it. And then, from a cueing standpoint, tail back, crown forward. And you'll notice in the teaching videos, the coaching videos inside the gym, there's a lot of time spent talking about the foot. There's a lot of time spent talking about tail to crown. There's a lot of time spent talking about head control. So if we set the stage for a decompressed structure, if we set the stage for space inside the system so that when the pressure funnels in, it just responds the way that it was designed to respond, which is flow into a boner, a bow, and then flow into a bow, and then go around into the corner and just open and close. And so, yeah, dude, I guess scatterbrain, dude. Can't even explain it. And so bow to corner, I'm trying to combine the two words for you guys. And so that's how it should just happen naturally. But you got to set the stage for the decompression. You got to build that in, right? And so that's what you want to focus on. That's why tail to crown has to stay there. If you don't have tail to crown, you're going to be in trouble. And so anytime you're shooting the tail forward and the crown goes back, you're going to be in a situation where, once again, back to what we talked about the early part of this IG Live, you're starting to compress the system. If you're compressing the system in any way, shape, or form, you're going to stunt that bow, you're going to stunt that corner, and it starts to show up in your game.
Yeah, Elon said he don't want to see the new videos for the boner.
Yeah, we'll leave that one out.
Yeah, we'll leave that one off. Somebody said any recommendations for a chair? Dude, honestly, this is about, let's see where. I switched over to this in the gym. I got the kneeling chair now, and I definitely could tell a difference. In the beginning, like it was a little tough, like, but it builds up if you really try to focus on keeping the lower back like engaged a little bit in the beginning. It just now I'm starting to notice that it's a little more natural for me. So I've been using this. I like it. I mean, you got to find something that fits you too. And, you know, kind of going back to when you were saying about decompressed structure, most people are trying GOATA out without a decompressed structure too. So
Right.
they don't go through the beginning. They don't go through the decompression. And what we did is if you notice, one of the big things we did business-wise is we tried to give you some of that beginning, them first 2 or 3 exercises for free. Like you could go drop your email address and get it sent to you or whatever. Like we're trying to give you it's a process involved. That's why we changed the Recode 225 to a process. Like we want you to go through it the right way and make it happen. And a lot of people will just jump in. If you front chain dominant and you go jump into a drop in right away or a weighted plate, because everybody wants to go take it to the max immediately, and you can't do that, man. You got to kind of walk. It's like going in and deadlifting. When you would have walked in and deadlift, you wasn't going to put 235 on the bar your first day. You was going to go in there and you was going to put the bar, make sure the back was right. And, you know, it should have been taught that way or however. But, you know, you're not going to just go jump straight into the top notch or whatever. In Recode 225, you know, on the business side of it, in the beginning, it wasn't just start here. It was graduate to here. Now it's becoming a starting point for people, so we have to modify it to the public's needs, and that's kind of what we're doing right now.
Well, it's just building. I mean, it was the performance website, and now all we're doing is putting a Recode program in there, a one-size-fits-all step-by-step progression from all fours to single leg, and that's how you're going to code up. You're going to code up by going from first all fours and making sure that you understand the cues, you understand how to organize yourself down there, and then start to progress up to a single leg. And you're never losing sight of those global laws throughout the process. Now, if you do that correctly and you start to ditch the support and you start to get to a single leg, even 2 columns, you know, bilateral work, you know, starting with the wall, but using the wall more like a protractor, like a ruler, just to kind of line things up. And then once I get things lined up and I kind of have the feeling around matching tape, and that's a big one, right? Because your feels aren't real. I can't stress that enough. I cannot stress that enough. That we have to, like you have got to match tape and then go, oh, so that's what it feels like to match tape. Then you can lock in to that feeling, because oftentimes people will just rush to what they think is inside ankle bone high or what they think is you know, a bow in a corner, and it's really not. And then they're, you know, going too fast. Like you said, we had a narrative that we want to talk about, which is, you know, faking it is fake. Like, so there's if you just show up and you first learn about GOATA and you're like, oh, I'm just going to run inner ankle bone high now, and I'm going to run and flick my heel away. You can have a placebo effect there where you're like, dude, I'm doing it. Like, it feels different in your mind. Well, feel isn't real. That's why you have to go back to the tape. So if you are going to be someone that's in a jogging derivative of any kind, well, you've got to make sure that you at least have tape on you so that you can go back and look and you can confirm and you can say, oh, that feeling that I thought was inside ankle bone high, actually it's not. Because I do see that a lot where people will show up, they'll be like, hey man, love your guys' stuff, and it's always good. You know, they're happy, they like what they're seeing, they agree with the concepts, but like Gary said, they're going too fast. They haven't really set the stage yet. And I think that's been a big push for us to move people to more of a state of no support, because what's happening is people are just leaning on a tower, or they're leaning on a wall, or they're leaning on a band, or they're leaning on you know, a stick, and they're not actually putting the pressure into where it's going to be on that single leg landing, which is the pressure is going to be in the system. The pressure is going to be down at the foot. It's not going to be against the stick. It's not going to be against the wall. It's not going to be against that tower. Those things are there, like the protractor, like the ruler, so that I can line everything up. I can, get into the exercise. I can put time under tension, not fall over early on. But then once I lock in that feeling, once I understand what that feeling is that matches tape, then it's like, okay, just keep going back to that feeling, because that feeling is confirmed on tape as a GOATA behavior. And the more you can get strong at those 2 pivot points with no support, 1 pivot point with no support, that's when you'll start to see the back end of your assessment change. And that's where people have a tough time is, well, they go to sprint and then there goes the collapse again. It's like, man, I'm doing all this groundwork. I'm doing all this wall work. I'm doing all this what I think is GOATA training. Why am I not coding up faster? And I would say that if you want to code up faster, you do have to progress to no support, but, well, you got to make sure that those no support derivatives look the right way and feel the right way, because when you're dealing with something as highly detailed as this, it's probably much easier to get it wrong than it is to get it perfect and get it correct. And if you're talking about jog, run, throw, swing, juke, cut, jump, that's where you really need to be perfect, so to speak. You have to have the things dialed in to subconsciously see that, because once you cross those white lines, like me and Hunter always joke when we're at the golf course, well, on the tee box is not the time to say, let's be inside ankle bone high. It won't happen that way. Right. You've got to set the stage, way back when.
Play the game after. But somebody, and then the whole pressure thing, we talk about building pressure and all of that, and support and things, and somebody asked about foot strike, and the word foot strike, like originally, like we use the terminology too all the time because it's so common of a word that's embedded in the training industry, but kind of really, like, it really shouldn't be foot strike in a sense, because you're really taking in, number one, the recoding process is starting with the foot. So you decompress the foot and ankle complex, you create space, and then you take it up to inside ankle bone high at a 10, and you teach it how to load up there. And you're teaching it how to behave at a 10 and hold pressure. That's why you see everybody shaking and all of that, because everybody's been training heels down. Now, when you look at like the track and field world, where foot strike is kind of going to be the most common thing, they would always teach, like the piston and the knee, because from the side view, we saw extension, flexion, knee drive, high knees, and stuff like that. When really it's not about foot strike and go. They want that to happen because it speeds up the gait cycle, but you still got to make the bow in the corner happen inside of that strike, which is an absorption of pressure, is the bow. So if you believe in the bow and you believe in the corner, then it's really not a foot strike. It's a loading point or a pressure point in the foot where we pivot at. So it would be load into the bow, release into the corner, and then you go bow corner, and it just keeps working side to side as you build pressure from column to column. Now, if I go out there and I've been doing heels down strength training, I'm neurologically programming the heel into the ground. But then if I go on the track and I go balls of the feet, strike and pull, strike and pull, strike and pull, that's not really what's happening. So if you kind of look at everything holistically and you say, well, okay, if I'm striking and pulling, well, sure, let's go do Nordic curls, because it would make sense. But if I look at how the body's actually traveling through space and I'm absorbing pressure and leaving, then it's a bow in the corner. Now, to answer the question of how should the foot strike happen when walking to stay GOATA, it should be a very low version of the same thing that you see as the foot hits the ground, whether the heel goes first or the side of the foot or the 2 through 5, the pressure is absorbed in 2 through 5, trailing away from the body. So it's and I always try to use centrifugal force as a concept, because it is the pressure building to the outside, like that, like you would see in the tornado, and then it moves in rotation, or a hurricane. but it's that landing, and then that energy's building 2 through 5, but that platform has to hold still and allow the inner ankle bone to climb. And then once it gets to a certain point, the bow is set. And then when the foot comes off the ground, it's like taking a spring and doing this and letting it go. And then it goes zoom, and that's the heel away. Mm-hmm. So you'll see, like when it's done at the highest level, you see the really violent heel flip. But if they don't have access into the ankle complex as a ball and socket, working with the hip, then that'll never perform properly. But go back again to what we said earlier, what you was talking about decompressing the system. If the system don't have the space to do it, how can it ever be pulled off? So don't start with the drop in, start with the bow hip stretch, start with the hip stretch rocker, start on the 6 pivot points and work your way to that point. But you have to own those positions in order to really pull it off. And then when you try to walk, you ain't got to try. It's going to automatically happen. Your foot's going to, wherever the foot hits the ground at, watch Randy Moss, multi-directional. Watch Ed Reed, multi-directional. The pressure is going to build to the high side. Mm-hmm. Like people will see them outside their columns and go, that's inside ankle bone low. No, it's not. Mm-hmm. You got to follow the pressure. Watch the shin open. Watch the shin close. And a lot of times in a dynamic situation like that, it don't take much. That's why a Usain Bolt midway through the race is striking in corner. He's hitting a bow in corner, the young Usain Bolt. He's hitting a bow in the corner. He's maintaining inside ankle bone high. So it got brought up the other day, right? The Kenyan runners. They'll show the Kenyan runners. Well, they're doing one thing. They're running straight, and they're running at a speed that's not maximum speed. They're not sprinting. There's more weight going in. They're setting a little bow in a corner, but they do show a lot of collapse a lot of times. But the thing is they're not trying to be dynamic off that system. They just trying to maintain a certain pace.
Yeah, I think maybe a better word than strike, because to me, strike just implies like
it implies that
driving down. Yeah. It's if I'm seeing it as that joystick analogy, right, where it's like it's got to hold still. So I would think of my foot as finding the ground, holding a certain shape, a certain platform, and then letting everything upstream do the movement. And that's where, GOATA is different than your traditional track stuff, which is, strike, strike and pull, or if it's knee drive, whatever it may be, it's a piston type of representation of the technology. Whereas, we're trying to show you that, like, look, what makes GOATA different and what gets us into a lot of fights is we're saying, no, the foot doesn't pronate, it doesn't supinate. It's this other thing that has yet to be cataloged. So it's hard for me. Yeah, like I can't give you people want a single plane, single range word. I can't give you that. It's not what it is. Like those were words that were brought from a dead body on a table, and now you've got living bodies moving pressure trying to emulate a dead body on a table's map. So it just never works. It always leads to linear.
That's not moving. You're moving it. You're
moving. So yeah, that's the other part is you're not. The dead body doesn't move. You're moving it on a single plane, single range. Well, that's not what it is. Like when the foot gets into its position of inside ankle bone high, it's multiplanar. It's moving on all 3 planes simultaneously to shore up that position, and it's not going to budge from that position the same way that a joystick's platform holds still, so that then the shin can then move multiplanar. And it's not moving sagittal, it's not moving frontal, it's not moving transverse, it's moving all 3 simultaneously. So it plays more like a spiral going down a spiral staircase and then going back up a spiral staircase. So what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to combine each word from the sagittal, the frontal, and the transverse to make some long, ridiculous definition off of TION words that are already long and ridiculous? No, just call it what it is. It's a new word. It's a bow. It's a behavior. It's something different. It's an action. It's a verb. So that's why it's crucial to have the conception or conceptualize what's going on here. So when you're walking, to long-winded answer to a what I would say are simple cues, and I just put that post out of that aerial view of Michael walking with these are the cues that we tell people to snap back into when they're walking throughout the day, because the reality is your walk is going to be up pace. You're going to be thinking about other things. If we are going to change this walk, I can't just be slowly, like one step at a time. There needs to be somewhat of a mantra that I can kind of snap into and start to correct me as I go. So we always tell people, keep your feet close, keep your feet straight, eggshell heels. So what that does is when I get my feet close, that automatically helps pop the inner ankle bone high. When I get my feet straight, that also helps pop the inner ankle bone high. When I get eggshell heels, meaning picture your heels literally as eggshells, well, you wouldn't want to crunch those eggshells. That helps you get inside ankle bone high. So those 3 cues, without ever having to say inner ankle bone high and then have to try to explain inside ankle bone high, all I have to say then is feet close, feet straight, eggshell heels. Feet close, feet straight, eggshell heels. And the byproduct of those 3 cues would then be a more inner ankle bone high walk. And what you should notice is that you're very light in the heels and you're heavier through really that outer corner leading into the second metatarsal all the way to your first metatarsal. So you're still having contact through the big toe. It's just that the pressure gets heavier over here, even though there's still pressure here. It's just very heavy in this outer corner of the foot. And so, yes, so your foot stays locked in the position. Yes, like that is what we are saying 100%. There does not need to be pronation. There does not need to be supination. Those things will get you in trouble. Those are single plane, single range. Don't think that way. Think of the shape. Think of the action and the feeling of being inside ankle bone high. The way we say it to people, fist width distance apart, and obviously different exercises may have slightly different cues, but just to give you an idea, in our no support drop-in, where we're loading one leg, we would have that foot straight. We'd have all the toe pads down. So basically big toe knuckle all the way to the pinky knuckle would stay down. And then I would lift the inner ankle bone high. And when you do that, your heel flies high. That's the position that should be locking into, and it should hold that position, just like your platform holds in your joystick as the joystick does the turning. So then the shin can do the movement. The foot doesn't have to. That's how the Achilles stays healthy. If the foot is moving, if the foot is collapsing, pronation or supination, that's going to be compression because it's single plane, single range, or the heel is going down, you're going to lock up the shin. If you lock up the shin, you lock up the joystick, you kill the movement, you start to tear at the connective tissue surrounding it, all the connective tissue surrounding it, and you start to degrade the capsule because you're not feeding the pattern.
Yeah. Yeah, there's your answer for the foot.
Yeah, but it's like it's you got to get back to what's practical because you got to be able to walk normal.
Level. So if you can't do those things, it's because there's something in that system that's not right. There's never been something I don't think like the Kenyan example again because somebody made a post about. And I think it just said, hey, why are their ankles doing that? And they let it go. And then it got like 1 million views or something crazy. And I must have been tagged in it 10 times. And, it's kind of hard to, those guys never ran with intention. So, if you take one of those guys and you train them inside ankle bone high the whole time and you keep the foot platform as sturdy as possible, they're probably going to perform better. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, how much trouble they have, or I know your boy, what's the
Kipchoge?
Yeah, he's pretty healthy guy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But if you took that pattern and you went multi-directional with it, we know it would lead to an injury because we see it over and over. It's the mechanism of injury, almost at the foot level, meaning the rest of the chain would have to respond in the side-to-side movement or something like that, or in the multi-direction. But we see the foot behave like that. It's not maintainable.
What's weird to me about the Kenyan thing and the Kipchoge is everyone's only fixated on, and these are same people that will tell you that, yeah, movement can't happen on a single plane. You're right. It's got to happen multiplanar. And then they'll say pronation. And then they won't even go above that joint segment to watch the thigh and the shin do a bow in a corner. It's yeah, but he's bowing and cornering. His kneecap points out, and then his kneecap points in. Why aren't we commenting on that as well? You can still be in the bow and have some collapse. It's not the ideal bow. Right. It's not what we're going to train. We're going to train for it to be ideal. Ideally, the foot wouldn't budge at all. That would allow your shin to open to its perfect setting, so where everything is in harmony. So it breaks the mold of what they're talking about, which is this piston. it doesn't make any sense. What they've taught is reverse movement. They've literally taught, they actually should say they've observed reverse movement, and then they've thought that, well, that's normal. We see it a bunch. Then it must just be what we do as human beings. So let's go ahead and say that that's the normal thing. Pronation, and then boom, you know, your kneecap snaps out and your heel snaps in, and that's the way it should be. And it's like, well, that's just observing WOATA. I mean, that's all that's going to tell you. That's like, you know, the same idea as saying, well, the population's heavy. Is this what we're supposed to look like as humans? Is this how we're supposed to behave as humans? Or is there other things at play here that we're not factoring in? Is this the ideal? It's not. So no, I would not ever train pronation for any reason, any shape or form. It's gonna wreck you. And I don't care what anybody says, because those people that are saying to train pronation, they haven't watched enough ACL shreds. They haven't watched enough Achilles shreds. If you feed that pattern into the system, it's going to break down over time. You don't want to collapse an arch. I mean, that's another narrative that we used to say. Are arches meant to collapse? Like I could never get a straight answer. I could never get a straight answer from these biomechanic experts, right? They're the smartest of the smart, apparently. Are arches meant to collapse? And they would say, oh, you know, they would skirt around it. I would say, just answer the question.
They would go all around it.
Meant to collapse? No, it's not meant to collapse. And you can even look at the design of the foot. And we've talked about this. The inside of the foot, it's a cliffside. Everything curves. Look at the way the toes cascade. We talked about this at last lab weekend. Look at how the big toe is bigger, and then it cascades down to the pinky toe. It's got like a gutter type effect where you want to get to where the majority of the pressure is on the out. It's all centered right there. It just shows you the curves built into the design. But once again, if you're schooling, what you've been taught is pronation, supination, dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, extension. That's what you're looking for in movement. Gilly wasn't looking for any of those things. He wasn't looking at any of that stuff. He was just saying, let me watch what they're doing. And he's just doing the National Geographic thing that we talk about. Watch it. Just watch what happens. Like, wow, that's interesting. The inner ankle bone stays high, the kneecap points out, and then the kneecap points in. Not like, well, how do I fit these words into what I'm seeing? It's more of, what am I seeing? And then what would be the best way to explain that after? And then we still look at the anatomy. That's what we do at lab weekend, man. We talk about the ideal, we match tape, and then on Saturday we come in and we have a deep dive of the anatomy. Now it's a more down-to-earth deep dive of the anatomy. We still talk the TIONs. Like when I'm deep diving the spinal engine, I kind of have to speak in the TIONs, because when you're talking about talking about Fryet's second law, you're talking about, and this was Fryet's second law is talking about GOATA. It's talking about those things and the laws that it's telling you that there's literal laws to how the spine plays. Like it's not up to you to just move your spine and wiggle it like a wacky inflatable tube guy, however you want to. Like, no, there's legit laws to how the facet joints are built to work. Well, there's legit laws to how the foot's supposed to work, how the shin's supposed to work, how the pelvis, all those things come into play when you observe the movement first and you're looking at where is the pressure, because once again, every system's moving something. What's the musculoskeletal system moving? It's moving pressure. Well, that dead body on a table is not moving pressure. So you've immediately moved the one thing that the musculoskeletal is moving. It's like trying to learn about the cardiovascular system without the blood. It's like trying to system without the air. You're missing the crucial ingredient that it's moving. So if you want to learn about the musculoskeletal system, you need to have your eyes on pressure. I can't see the pressure unless I go frame by frame.
Yeah. And like you know, you talk about what Gilly observed, the intention behind the indigenous tribesmen, the intention was purely survival. It was to eat, it was to hunt. So the athleticism that they had to possess to do those things, to track down a pig, would be an athleticism that you could take into any sport and perform well and be safe at the highest level. Yep. The intention behind the Kenyan runner or the intention behind the weight trainer, it's not survival. It's more of, can I get faster? Can I get stronger? Because this is the things that we've taken in as this is how you do get faster and stronger, and this is the modalities you use to do it, without any regards to that innate pattern of survival that the baby in the indigenous tribes was getting.
Yeah.
Throw in the eye to killing, and she could still do it at 104.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So it's got to be there. Somebody said you'd want the strong and stable ankles. What I don't want anybody to do is get confused on, like, you want strong feet, but you want the way that we obtain these things is what you really need to look at.
Yeah.
The way that we go about
Good
getting
point.
to that point. Like, if you go out there and you say, I'm gonna run with strong feet today, like, you're not. You're gonna run the same way you've been running your whole life. Like,
Yeah.
you need to go in there and say, okay, I'm gonna get an eval done and find out who I am first. Right? Let me see who I am. You get the eval done, it's one of us two that's gonna do it. Unless you go get a GOATA coach in person, which is great. That GOATA coach could show you who that person is if you have someone. If you get it off the GOATAmovement.com site, then it's going to be one of us. Mostly you, probably, because the gym's so busy right now in the off season. But this is the thing. From that eval, we're able to see and identify the problem, go attack the problem. 2 months later, come back and do the eval and watch the change happen. And through repetitions, like you say all the time, it's either death by 1,000 reps or you're recoding by 1,000 reps. You're gonna pick one, because otherwise you're only decoding, right? You're gonna go backwards or you're gonna go forwards. You're not sitting stagnant. It's gonna get worse over time, because gravitational pull is in existence in your life at all times. Chairs, shoes, non-negotiables, cars, that shit is playing on you every day. Throw that in the weight room. Throw that on the track, throw that somewhere where there's something that could be pulling you deeper into it, then you start to have some problems. What's happening is, especially in my area, is now that the trainers, because in the beginning we didn't get along. I've had the second, third one that's talked to me. You know, I got AB now. I got the guy Diddy with the lab. These guys are coming over here and they saying, okay, G, I see what you're saying. I understand what you're saying now. Give my guys the eval. Tell me where they at. And then go throw the sauce on them if that's what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? Go do the field work. Go do this. But if the kid's inside ankle bone low, every time he backdrops into a back pedal, he's got a possibility of injury, because there's nothing in place to take him away from it. Because if it was, he would already be inside ankle bone high. It's the Kevin Durant thing. You could have duck feet. No, you can't. Kevin Durant got duck feet and popped his Achilles. You could run. You could look at Usain Bolt coming off the Shapier thing. Look at the duck feet. Well, the duck feet, yeah, they all got soft tissue injuries. Every
guy he showed was wrecked.
Track careers in because of soft tissue injuries. Every day. Every day. And then the next thing you know, you take this track athlete that's got his high school years, his college years, and then guess what? The ultimate goal is what? A gold medal at the Olympics. They got 4 years. They might get to do that twice if they a high-level guy. A third time is like fucking 12 years doing this shit. You get to go to the World Championships. You got some other stuff. There is a very small window to make sure that this shit is right. And if you sitting there and you've been dealing with soft tissue injuries in college, in high school, and you get to the pros and you fucking doing Nordic curls and Olympic lifts, after that's what you got to change something. It's insanity. It's like saying, look, dude, we're going to go to drug rehab and we're going to do all of this and we're going to smoke crack on Fridays. No, you can't do that shit. It don't work that way. You got to take and change something. That's what happened when Jamal got hurt. I knew I had to make a change. I had to, or I was going to keep doing what I was doing. And I jumped into this shit not knowing, not understanding. And then the blueprint now, compared to when it was basically inside ankle bone high, and then with the blanks that you filled in with the work that you've done to sit there and identify these patterns and hone in on it and study hours and hours and hours. And Gary, try this. Gary, try that. Gary, do this. Gary, do that. And we keep reinventing the wheel over and over. That had to be done. It had to be done. So if the information's not coming out of that institute right now, it's probably wrong.
Yeah.
And if
No, it
you're
is.
not
I guarantee
working
it.
the process,
I see it every
you're
day.
not going to get it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And I would, to just kind of finish up with whatever Matthew was asking, I don't know how familiar you are with our stuff, Matthew, or this is maybe a beginning for you with GOATA, but that's the other part is like strong and stable. Like, I don't know what you mean by that. I don't even know what you mean by ankle, so it's like sometimes with those types of situations, clearing up the definitions is helpful for people. I would say you want strong and stable feet, and then you need a
It's two
mobile
different
ankle.
segments.
It's two different, like they're compartments, right? So there's a healthy disassociation that takes place between the foot and then the talus and the tibula fibula above it. So the tib fib with the talus is the joystick. That plugs into the foot. So you've got to think of the foot as its own compartment and the talus tib fib as another compartment. They're going to work together, creating a healthy disassociation that allows us to pull off the bow in the corner. Mm-hmm. So when you say strong and stable ankles, maybe from a feeling perspective, if you were to get it right, it would feel to you that, hey, my ankles are strong and stable. But once again, it's just the other thing of like, some people, they take these concepts and they're like, oh, I just got to have strong feet. And that's all I got to do. Like, someone sent me some stuff the other day and people were pulling landmines from the ground. And I think their intention was to have inner ankle bone high. I think their intention was to be heel away.
Yeah.
But frame by frame, it's just not going to play out
They're
that
not
way.
watching
Like,
film, dude.
Yeah, like your intention is one thing, and that's great.
I've
like
shot 10 videos today in one session. Like, I'm just constantly doing film. Scuba Jones said unlocked rather than strong. The ankle would be unlocked. The foot would be strong. I mean, you could, whatever, and listen, whoever you're standing in front of, too, is going to be a big thing. As a coach, like, we got to make sure that we get that's why the verbalization of it with the visual of it has to be understood for the athlete. I'm dealing with 12-year-olds. I'm dealing with 22-year-olds. Mm-hmm. I'm dealing with 50 and 60, 70-year-olds. How I talk to a 70-year-old grandmother is going to be different than I talk to a 12-year-old kid. So everything, like, one shoe don't fit all for a teaching moment. You know what I'm saying?
We've talked about it, man. We're like, sometimes you need 10 different ways to say the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
And once again, this is what we're getting back to. And don't lose sight of this, because a lot of the detractors that have gone on to try to create their own stuff for sake of business, they got away from what the main goal was. Match tape. That's all we're trying to do. When the pressure hits the system, it needs to look a certain way. When the pressure transfers and leaves the system, it needs to look a certain way. So don't let people fool you with this, like, nonsense cadaver science, or this, this is actually, GOATA's right, but it's a byproduct of this and this. Like, no, GOATA's a byproduct of GOATA. GOATA's not a byproduct of being inside ankle bone low with your kneecaps pointing straight. You're not going to train with your kneecaps pointing straight and build a bow. You're just not. It's not how it works. Like, these things are match tape. That's the whole concept of GOATA. That's what it started as. It started as a system that was trying to find a way to simplify the mess that has become academia's version of biomechanics. Really, just to simplify all this nonsense that is littered in the textbooks, and it's littered in the gyms, and it's littered in every single sports organization that we see in. Bigger, stronger, faster, and more hurt. Everybody's hurt. Everybody hurt. Wherever you're looking, left, right, up, down, doesn't matter where it is. The injury numbers are through the roof, but apparently the science is better. Apparently the nutrition's better. Apparently the training's better, but I can't find it. I can't see it. I don't know where it is. I'm still looking for it.
World, dude. Jonathan Taylor. He moves like shit. He has a great year. He goes into his offseason. He's hungrier than ever. He comes back. The system, what he's doing is not sustainable. He gets hurt. He misses games. It probably took a step back. The Leonard Fournette, the guy, he dropped 30 pounds. He comes out. He pulls his hamstring again. You telling me at 30 he did it, at 40 he did it, like 20 pounds heavy he did it. 3 years, 4 years in a row, it's the same thing over and over. The weight ain't got a fucking thing to do with it. It's the
Nope.
movement and how you
It's the
carry
movement.
the weight. That's got everything to do with
Mhm.
it. Clean up the movement, you clean up the problem. Can we fix somebody in a month? That's the, you know, give me an off season, a
Yeah.
whole off season. You
Yeah,
know,
that'd be nice.
I have never, the only person that I've ever been able to do that with, that I've had here the whole time, was a McCluskey. He
Yeah.
he had went off. He had to go this way. He had to go. He went. I had a whole solid nonstop year, and when he left the Saints and went back to the XFL, he was perfect. He lands with straight feet. He's got a bow. He's got a corner, and we're still working on it
Mhm.
but he's in this. He don't do all of the other shit, you know. And there's still some things he's doing I don't even want him to do. But what I'm saying is the loading, the releasing, the way that he's using his hips and the feet is all GOATA. You know what I'm saying? And then Matthew, you know, if you're new to it or whatever, go to GOATamovement.com. You could get some PDFs. We got some free stuff out there. Go look at that stuff. Get the information. If you want to get on a call or something, you could inbox me or whatever. Dude, I'll jump on a call with you just to make sure that you get understanding, because we want to protect everybody. Like, we don't want no misunderstandings, no misconceptions. I have never had an athlete come in here, do GOATA for a month, and then walk away and say, the last thing that Kittle ever told me, man, I felt great. This is the best. My Achilles ain't bothered me. And it's the first time in a whole week my Achilles has never bothered me. And then, you know, he turns around, he's still deadlifting on slant boards. That's not GOATA. We had to find that out, right?
And I think, you know, I talked to some coaches today about this actually, and I was like, they sent me a former coach, and they were doing, you know, it was like they as they put it in the inbox, they're like, this person looks like they got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And I said, I go, honestly, I see it as full accountability on our end, you know, extreme ownership, extreme ownership. Like we're the ones that are in front of it. I say this, if we had the Institute and the Recode program back in 2019, I don't think you have as many confused early coaches as you see littered out there in Instagram right now. Like I almost feel like we let them down because we had Slack, we had Google Drive, and people weren't able, like, look, guys, when you get into this thing, you need to sit down in front of your computer, your iPad, whatever it is, your phone, and you just need to let this thing, like a slow drip, just hit your eyes, hit your eyes, hit your eyes. And our system before that, like, it had video, but it wasn't really set up in a way where it was like a slow drip, and you were getting it systematically, step by step, explained to you to where you could have, like, oh, okay, this makes sense type of moment. That's what we try to do with the Institute. It's like, dude, we got to get this thing organized. It's got to be in an outline table of contents type of setting to where that person that's sitting across from that computer, they can let this pattern sink into their brain. And then once they see it, now they want to go feel it. Okay, well, when you feel it, you want to start from all fours and work to a single leg. There's the Recode program. So I think that if we had the Institute and the Recode program up earlier, and we just didn't have, I mean, it's one of those things. We didn't have the resources and all that. I'm just saying from a full, you know, accountability type setting, that would have been better. I don't think as many people would have been confused as to what the global laws are, or what are we doing, or what should we not be doing, and all those types of things. And like, look, the other part of it is, I think there's a bigger macro view happening. I think we as a company would love to just rip the Band-Aid off, and then the whole industry is like, yeah, it's movement centered, and yeah, there's a drive gear, and yeah, there's a reverse gear. But what I think's really going to happen, and I think how it's going to play out, is what you're seeing, where it's going to be 50-50, then it's going to be 60-40, then it's going to be 70-30, then it's going to be 80-20, 90-10, and then pretty soon those people are going to tell you that they invented it. Like, that's just how it's going to be. That's how the systems work.
How many commercials you see? People trained to standing up there saying, "I created a system based off the movement patterns of babies." Wait, what?
Yeah, wait, what? But that's how I think it's going to be. Yeah, like that's how I think it's. I think that there's going to be a slow rip of the Band-Aid off, and I think that the bigger idea here is that we're trying to get the industry, or just trying to get the world to see that you've got to prioritize the way your musculoskeletal system handles pressure. That narrative is what we really push. There's pressure moving throughout the system. There's an ideal way to move that pressure. Here's the vocab words, the verbs that we came up with to simplify and to help explain a way to see it and feel it sooner. But this is what's really going on. And that old template of flexion, extension, 1 rep max, percentages, there's some good training concepts in there, but largely from a macro view, we completely miss the point. And that's why we see more explosiveness, we see more power, we see more aesthetics, and in conjunction with all of those, we see more injury. Because we never really first established, okay, what was the durable, what was the fragile? Now let's layer the explosion. Now let's layer the strength. Now let's layer the speed and the aesthetics around that durable pattern. So I just think that the way human nature is, it's going to be more of a 50-50 to a 60-40, 70-30. And then eventually, look at like guys like Weck, guys like Naughty, like we've talked about this. They're around the right concept. Like they agree that the magic's in the movement. Like they're saying a lot of good things, but at the same time, they missed a lot of key details, and they missed those details down at the foundation of the column. And that's what Gilly saw that sets him apart, is that he saw inside ankle bone high, and he saw that the ankle was a swivel joint. Those two things right there are what sets this whole narrative in a different direction. And it's what is the hardest thing to get people to understand. And it's the biggest root of the fights that we have had and that we will have with people, is that the root of the problem is at the root of the column. And if we cannot agree on that the ankle is a ball and socket, we're going to have problems when it comes to how we train the system, right? And so getting that narrative, pulling that rug out from underneath these people and replacing it with the inner ankle bone high, bow and corner rug, man, that's going to be a battle. But I think in overall, it's good, because I think overall more and more people are, one, waking up to the fact that, hey, we are pretty injured and we should probably talk about this. And people are talking about it to the extent to where they're willing to rip up the turf because they think that might be the culprit. So at least people are discussing injury. At least people are discussing movement. At least I'm seeing people say things like, hey, maybe we shouldn't deadlift. Maybe we shouldn't back squat. They may not be saying GOATA or bows and corners, but at least they're saying and they're challenging what has been the status quo. And that's encouraging for me, because I think that's just telling me that we're on a path towards more of a movement-based training sort of blueprint for the whole world. And then look, man, all those other systems, I don't care who you are, whether it's a detractor from us or it's a Naughty or a Weck, you're our gateway drug. That's the reality of the situation. You are the gateway drug to GOATA. They're coming to us at the end of the day. And then when they get into the institute, through those people. And I love those people for that. Like I love the Detractors. I love the Naughties. I love the Wecks, because you guys are our best feeder systems. You're my XFL. You're my USFL. You're my CFL. I'm the NFL. Like we are the top dog. Like you're coming to us whether you like it or not. And that's not to be cocky. It just, you can't talk on it frame by frame. You can't speak on it. You can't do what I do. You can't do what Gary does, because you never tried to. You never tried to go frame by frame. You never tried to explain pressure frame by frame. So if you watch these other people, the Detractors, the Naughties, the Wecks, the tape's moving too fast for me. I go, how are you breaking down video when they'll like slow it down? It's like, that's not slow motion. Frame by frame is slow motion. That's how you determine where the pressure is. So when someone just kind of has it slow and they're talking over the video, that ain't it. That ain't it. And so that's good, though, because it starts the discussion. That's the alcohol. That's the weed. We're the meth. We're the heroin. You're coming to us. You're all just gateway drugs for what we do. So, but bigger picture, it at least sends the discussion towards more movement-based than lifting-based and cadaver science.
Yeah. Yeah. I always did say that, too, that them guys they knew there was a problem. You know what I'm saying?
They know the movement's the magic. I at least give them that, 100%. They know.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I got I got a couple of clients coming in, and then I got Caden. They don't know if he's gonna be with the Saints next. Well, he don't know. Caden Ellis, the linebacker, so he's virtual right now. So I got him in a few minutes. But no, that was good. Good talk. Always good. The lives. You can check these lives up. They chopped up. They got pieces of them on our YouTube channel. So you got a YouTube channel, the GOATA Movement YouTube, and then you also have the Recoded, the podcast channel. We still have that GLS performance team one sitting out there, I think. But yeah, it's got decent information, but it's a little bit older. But you definitely want to follow the GOATA Movement YouTube, and like I said, we'll lead you to that with some of this. I think you're gonna timestamp all of this stuff again, Rick. You're pretty good about getting that out.
Yeah,
real quick.
What I'll try to do is timestamp everything and put it up on YouTube and cut some of this stuff up here. I mean, look, the content that we're trying to push on Instagram is to, one, give you all a little bit of education, kind of get your feet wet, and then if you are truly trying to learn this from either an athletic perspective, a parent perspective, a coach perspective, you want to go to the Institute because, like I said, it's been laid out in order for you to learn. That's the whole point. And right now and forever, the GoToInstitute.com. Once you're in it for life. So it's a lifetime access to GOATA Institute. You get certified just by going through the videos twice. It's a real simple certification process. You get a lab weekend invitation included with that, meaning that, once you sign up for the Institute, you'll have that for life. You'll get certified. You'll be on our coaching roster. And if you want to come down to New Orleans for one of our 3-day lab weekends that we hold every other month throughout the year, you're more than welcome to. And that's no additional charge. What else we got? We got Recode 225, which is our
50% off.
Yeah, 50% off of Recode 225.
You get your first subscription free. If you want to do it long term, you want to jump in, you can get a year right now for like $300 or something. Use Feb 50 at checkout to get the 50% off, and then it renews at regular price.
Stay tuned for the Recode program going into Recode 225. That's going to be our program that we wrote, taking you from Groundwork 101 all the way up to Advanced Single Pivot Point 402. So we've got it kind of set up in a 101, 102, 201, 202. So it's really there to let you start this journey the right way. So if you want to get a sneak peek of that and kind of start that process, I have it in my stories pretty much all the time. You could probably go there right now and you'll see it. It's also a link in my bio, but you can get that first exercise for free. So that first one is, we have them in sort of concepts. So the first one's building the foundation. Phase 1 is Groundwork 101. So that's going to be a lot of 6 pivot point, meaning all 4s derivatives, but you're going to start to get yourself a little more inside ankle bone high, a little more back chain dominant, start to feed the bow in the corner a little bit. And that's what I would say is go get that first exercise, start it out. And then, if you like what you're feeling, which I think you will, go find a GOATA coach. Go find someone that's going to put you in the GOATA app. Go find someone that's in the Institute, and that's going to give you information and going to help sort of, take you along that path. I would say that a GOATA coach sort of becomes your guide to recognizing where you are and then moving you towards where you want to be, which is more GOATA. So the more GOATA you are, the more durable you are, the more efficient you are. And that's the goal, is to get you durable, get you efficient. Being durable gets you pain-free. Being efficient lets you kind of, explore your sport, explore your skill to really, its potential for you. And the more you're on the field, the more you can level up.
Yep. All right. Well, next week, we're here every Friday at noon Central Time. So I'll y'all catch this, chop it up, and then if anybody's got any questions or whatever, y'all can inbox us.
All right.
All right,
I'll talk to you.
All right.
Peace.